All right. Okay, so for square roots, so this unit is the only no calculator unit, okay? And then after this, you get to use a calculator for anything you want. So for square roots, just think about like what number times itself makes that, okay? So what number times itself makes 9? 3, yeah. What about 36? Mm-hmm. And then 81? Good. Okay, so now we're going to look at different types of decimals because when we categorize things today, certain types of decimals go in one spot and other types go in another spot, okay? So terminating is going to be just your normal decimal that like just stops, okay? Repeating is there's two different ways that repeating will look. It'll either have the repeating bar or it'll be like a ... at the end, but you can see in the pattern that it's repeating. And then neither is going to be like the ... decimals that are just like a mess, okay? So what's this first one going to be? Neither, yep. So you have the ... meaning it goes on forever, but there's no pattern, okay? What about 2.75? Terminating, yep, just kind of stops. And then 3.45 with the bar, repeating, yep. So I'm going to write that one the other way that you could see it. So if it had like 3.45, 4, 5, 4, 5, and then the ... at the end, because you can see that it's obviously a repeating pattern that goes on forever, then that would be repeating also, okay? And then plot and label. So two things, plot, label. For plot, they're wanting the dot. Label, they want you to like label with the dot where the dot is, okay? So 3, zoom right there and label it with a 3. -1 right here, label it -1. 4.5 is halfway between 4 and 5, and label it 4.5. Okay? Any questions on that? Cool. All right. So now your objective, so that's going to be kind of like your goal. Every single objective we write in this class is going to start out with this, SWBAT. Does anybody have any idea what that might stand for? No? I don't think anybody's ever guessed it right. Any guesses? No? Okay, so it stands for students will be able to. Okay, so just kind of like what you should be able to do after this lesson. Okay, so for today, students will be able to, we're going to classify, graph, and compare real numbers. Graph is going to be more referring to a number line than an actual like graph that you guys have done in the past with lines. Yeah. All right. So first up, we're going to classify, which means we're going to kind of like put things into categories. Okay. So we have this whole giant thing. It's the real number system. And this is how we kind of group different numbers together. So think about this as kind of like, these are all like clubs that you can belong to, okay? The most exclusive club that the least amount of people are invited to is going to be all the way down here. So these 3 at the bottom, these 3 clubs right here, I hate using the word whole because whole is one of them, but whole meaning not decimals, not fractions. Okay, so these ones can have no fractions or decimals. So if you have a fraction or a decimal, you're going to start either here deciding which one of these two it's going to go into. Okay, so these are exclusive to just like whole numbers. All the way at the bottom, the most exclusive one, you're only allowed to have positive whole numbers in that. And then the only change as you move up 1 is that all the positive numbers are still invited to this club, but now the only other thing that's now invited is 0. Okay, so the only difference in it is that 0 is allowed to go to this party, but not allowed to go to this one. Okay. Then the next step up, now all of the negative whole numbers are invited, okay? So we have positive whole numbers, 0, and also negative whole numbers. So integers would kind of be like all the numbers you would use when you're making a number line. So you'd like put 0 in the middle and then label both sides positives and negatives, okay? From there, decimals and fractions are going to be allowed now. So you kind of have to distinguish between the two. So fractions are easier because fractions are all going to go on the rational side. So all fractions belong here. So no fractions go here. So if your number is a fraction, you know immediately it's going to be on the left, okay? Decimals is where you kind of see that split. So if you think back to up at the top when we did the warm-up, we had 3 kind of categories. We had terminating, repeating, and neither, right? All of your terminating and repeating decimals are going to also go on this side, okay? So terminating. And repeating. Goes over there. And then the only thing that's going to go on the right side is going to be all of those neither decimals, okay? So all of the ones that have the ... at the end, that there's no pattern, okay? So I'm going to add that. So there's no repeating pattern, and it goes on forever. Move it over. Right. Okay, so the other thing to kind of note, so this seems pretty straightforward, but there's certain values that you have to think a little bit about, so especially for irrational. So some values that fall into this category but aren't super straightforward would be like pi. So pi is one of those numbers where it goes on and on forever. There's no repeating pattern. And then the other kinds that get kind of tricky are square roots, trying to decide where to put those. So the rule with square roots is going to be if it's something like the square root of 9, you guys know that's 3, right? Like you can take the square root of it, it's nice and easy. So then it's going to be on the left side. All of the square roots that you can't easily take the square root of are going to go here, okay? So like the square root of 17, for example, okay? So if you can't easily take the square root of it, it's going to be a decimal, it's going to be that kind of decimal, right? All right, and then all the way at the top, you have real. And it's kind of a silly word because it's like obviously everything's real, like it exists. But when you get to your junior year of math, all of a sudden they introduce imaginary numbers. And it gets a little crazy. So for right now, this is going to be everything, okay? So think about like real as like the whole world. Okay, it's like whole planet Earth, and then from there, all the people on the planet Earth are like split up into different like groups and categories. And then when imaginary numbers come in, that's kind of like aliens on Mars, like a whole separate deal. Okay, it's not included in this. And then the other last thing is that the way that this is formed is that things get more inclusive as you work your way up. So like hardly anybody's invited to this club down here, and as you go up, more and more people are allowed to come. So whenever you figure out what like the lowest on the list club that like a number can go in, you also list everything above it because it also is allowed at everything, okay? Yeah, okay. And that's it. All right, so let's go to the example on the next page. So all of the ones that say problem are going to be ones that we're going to do together. All the ones that say got it are like, you try it, I'll give the answers, see if we need to go over it, or if you're good, then we move on, okay? All right. So think about it kind of like you guys are like the bouncers right now, and like this person's coming to the door and you're trying to say which club they're allowed to enter, okay? So 15, so that is a not fraction, not decimal, whole number, and it's positive. So if we look at our little list, what is the lowest, like the most exclusive club that 15 can go to? Natural, right? So it's allowed to go into natural, which means that it's also allowed in to everything above it. So it's also allowed into whole, integer, rational, and real. Okay? So on the quiz, let's say you just totally blank out of everything. You don't remember a single thing when we get to the quiz. You should at least get 1 point on this question because every single one you're going to write real because every single one's going to be real. You know that much, okay? So at least start with that. All right, for B, we have negative 1.4583. So for decimals, remember that's kind of where you have to figure out what kind of decimal it is first. So is that a terminating, a repeating, or a neither? So we're always looking for a dot, dot, dot. Okay, so the dot, dot, dot is what's going to tell you it goes on forever. That's where your neither ones are going to be. Okay, so if there's no dot, 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 that means it stops. So what's that going to be? Terminating. Yep. So this is a terminating decimal because it stops after a certain point. So where do our terminating decimals? So if you're looking, you know automatically these bottom three, no, because you can't have decimals or fractions down there. So where is it going to go?
Rational.
Yep, rational. So it's going to be rational, and then if it's rational, it's also what? Real. All right, and then for square roots, so there's going to be two situations for square roots that you're going to have. Either you're going to be able to easily take the square root of it, and then it's going to end up pretty much just being like a positive whole number answer, so it's going to be all of those. Or if you can't easily take the square root of it, then it's going to be those, okay? So 57, does 57 have a clean square root? No. So that means that this automatically we know is going to be one of those neither decimals. It's going to go on forever. It's going to be ugly. So this one's going to be irrational and also real. Okay? All right, so now go ahead and try those next ones, so just that got it piece. Put what you think is the answer, and then we're going to go over it and see if you got it right. And then you guys will also notice too, the homework comes directly after the notes. So if you're somebody who finishes these problems quick and writes quick, then feel free to turn to like where it says 1.1 homework, the worksheet, and you can start on the problems that we've already done the examples for. And then as soon as we go over it, then just flip back to the notes. Okay? So if you do this right and you're using every single minute, like all the in-between minutes, you're not ever just sitting there, then you honestly shouldn't really ever have homework that you have to do at home. Alright guys, take like another minute it looks like, and then everyone will be close to done or done. Yeah. What is it? You know, because you immediately think one, but it's not. Alright guys, let's go ahead and go over this. So finish when you're on and then flip back to the notes so that you don't miss anything. Alright, so the first one is the square root of 9. So remember with square roots, you want to try to figure out, is it something you can take the square root of, something you can't. Okay, so 9, does that have a good square root?
Yeah.
Yeah, what is it? 3, yeah. So you're going to use 3 to kind of make your determination. So that's going to mean we're on the left side of this chart. Okay, so what is the lowest club that 3 goes into?
Natural.
Natural, yeah. So it's going to belong in natural, and then everything above it. So you should have natural, whole, integer, rational, and real. Okay. Good? All right, for B, we have negative 0.45. What kind of decimal is that? It's terminating, yep. So where is that going to go?
Rational.
Yep, rational, and also what? Yeah. All right, for C, we have a fraction. So automatically, fractions always go one spot, always. Where do they go? Rational. Yep, so these are always going to go in rational no matter what. The reason why is because, so fractions are just division, right? So if you wanted to figure out that decimal, you would just do 3 divided by 10. The thing with fractions is that when you divide those two numbers, it's always going to be either a terminating decimal or it'll be a repeating decimal, like 1/3, how it's like 0.33333. It's never going to be something that just goes on and on forever, besides repeating. So if it can be written as a fraction, automatically you know it's going to be on that side. All right, and then -4. So it is a whole number, but it's negative. So what's the first spot that negative whole numbers are allowed? Integer. Yep. So it's going to be an integer, and also rational, and real. I'm going to add some extra notes to this too. Like this, I'm going to say all fractions are rational. So I'm just going to take pictures of these notes and post them too. Yeah, okay. Just because when you guys look back on this before a quiz, it's like if you just have answers, you're like, that doesn't really help. All right. So that's going to be like all the classify stuff. Do we have questions on any of that before we move to the next stuff? Cool. All right. So we're going to hit like the compare part first, and then the graphing is going to come in at the end when we do like plotting on a number line when we have like a whole list, okay? So if we're just comparing, and we're going to use those symbols I know you guys have seen forever. Okay. So we're just going to start with these 3. So do you guys know which one is which? Which one the first one is?
Great.
Everybody's always said that one though. So this one is actually less than, so is less than. Then the next one would be is greater than. And then the last one is equal to. And then we're also going to do like the hybrid ones at some point, I think next unit, where it's like the greater than or less than with the line. That like means now anything equal to is also allowed. You'll see in this lesson I'll do like the equal to, but it's like squiggly lines, meaning like it's approximately equal to. So there's different ones, but those are the main ones. The way that I remember the difference between these two, I know there's a million, is I always look at these like arrows, and less than always points to the left. I just literally say that in my head, less than points to the left, less than points to the left, okay? All right, and then the way that I do this, like the strategy when I'm comparing, is I always turn everything into a decimal. The reason why is because everything can be turned into a decimal. Not everything can be a fraction, not everything can be a whole number, but decimals are pretty much universal. So if I put them both as a decimal, then it's really easy to see which one's bigger, okay? So let's look at these bottom ones, and I'm going to kind of show you how to do square roots on the calculator too. So let's start with this fraction one, okay? So remember, fractions are just division. They're just, that just says 1 divided by 3. Do you guys know off the top of your head, like what decimal that would be, 1 divided by 3? Anyone? I'm sure what just popped into your head is the right answer. Nothing? Okay, so let's grab, if you have your own calculator, grab that. If you don't, go grab one from there. It's okay if 2 people are on one because we're not going to use it really. I'm just going to show you one thing on it. But just so you can like see the buttons in front of you. Yeah, so if you don't have one, just grab someone sitting by you and just look off the same one, okay? All right, so first, so let's do that 1/3. Let me zoom out so you guys can see the whole thing. Okay, so if I'm trying to make a decimal out of 4 1/3, what I would do is I would literally just do 1 divided by 3 in a calculator and look at that decimal, okay? So it's going to be that 0.3 repeating. Did anybody think that in their head? They just didn't want to say it? Yeah, okay. So this is going to be like 4.333, and that 3 is going to be repeating. Okay? So this is going to be a little bit tricky because, like I said, this unit is the no calculator unit because literally tomorrow we're learning how to add and subtract numbers. Okay? So, like, you can't really use a calculator on that quiz. So with square roots, I'm going to show you how to do a square root in the calculator just so that you guys know. But we're pretty much going to approach those like guessing. And on the quiz, it's going to be very, very, very obvious. It's not going to be like this where it's kind of close and you're not really sure. Like, you'll know, okay? So for 17, we can't really do that evenly, but let's find one that's close. So what's going to be like the closest? 4, right? So the square root of 16 is 4. We know that. And then what would be the next one up?
5.
Yep, 5 is the square root of what is 5? 25, yeah. Okay, so if we are looking at that, so we know it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 5, and just kind of look at what it's closest to. 17 is like basically 16, okay? So you know it's going to be just a little bit more than 4. So then when you're looking at this and that's like 4.3, do we think that this is going to be more than that?
Yeah.
So do you think it's going to be bigger than 4.3 if it's like right after 16 or if it's going to be smaller? Smaller probably, right? So now let me show you how to actually find it in the calculator. So the thing with, and I'm going to show you off of the same one as the yellow ones. If you don't have a yellow one, look off yours and a yellow one in case you ever have to borrow one. But the thing with these is basically that like when they made this, if they put all of the buttons that you need onto the calculator, it would be like this big, okay? So what they did instead is they basically broke that into 3 pieces and then layered them on top of each other. So if you look at these buttons, most of the buttons have something written on them, and then they have something written in blue and then something written in green, okay? Do you guys see that, or 2 different colors? So how you do that is if you need a button to be used that's like it's written in blue, then you just hit the blue button before you click the button. And if you need the green, you just click the green button and then the button that you need. So each button does 3 things. Does that make sense? Kind of? Okay. So your square root is going to be over here. It's going to be the same as the x squared button. I'll kind of zoom into that so you guys can see. So it's me right here. Okay? So if I want to use the square root instead of the x squared, then you're just going to hit the blue button before. Okay? So hit the blue button and then hit that button, and then the square root is going to pop up. Okay? On the scientific calculators, really, really close to that button is going to be another square root, but it's going to have a little like X out front. Don't use that one, okay? So now we can just do 17. So it's like 4.12-ish. So the actual answer here is approximately 4.12. So then you know which one's going to be the bigger number? 4 1/3, yeah. So the arrow's going to always, I think about like a number line. So it's going to be like this. The arrow always points to the less than one. I mean, on a number line, less than's always to the left. All right, does that make sense? Okay, so go ahead and try the got it. The first one's already a decimal, so try to like estimate that square root. Try to estimate it first and then put it in the calculator and see if you're right, okay? Like I said, the one on the quiz, it's going to be very, very obvious which one's bigger by estimating. All right, let's go over this. So for 129, figure out what it's between. And I know that, like, I know in this class we rarely go above square root of 100 is 10, which is that's where we kind of stop. So it might be a little challenging to go past. So what is the closest to that? Square root of what?
11.
Yeah, so it's going to be 11. So that's going to be the square root of 121 is 11. And then what would be the next one up? 12, and so 12 times 12 was what? Yeah, 144. Okay, so you know it's going to be somewhere between 11 and 12. Is it going to be closer to 11 or closer to 12? 11, right? Because 129 is definitely closer to 121 than it is 144. So you know it's going to be like on the lower half between them. So that's definitely above half. So you can probably make a pretty good guess about which one's bigger. If you throw this in the calculator, you get like 11.36-ish. So either way, that one's going to be smaller than the first one. So it's going to be like that. Okay? Any questions on that? Nope? Okay. So that's like kind of comparing, and then we're going to do like a big comparing with like graphing, which is just plotting points on a number line. And then that is it. So, for these ones, let me zoom out. All right, so we want to order them from least to greatest. Plot them on a number line. I like to do the number line before I actually make the list, because once you have it on the number line, then you can just go left to right, okay? Same kind of strategy, so put them as a decimal. You just want to make sure that when you put the list at the end and on the number line, you use the original form of it, not the decimal form you made, okay? So, square root of 4, what's that? Yep, that's 2. That's already a decimal. That's already a decimal. So 2, negative 2/3. Remember, it's just division. So you can divide it in your calculator, or if you think you know what it is. Anything over 3 is going to be repeating. Okay, so that's negative 0.6 repeating. And then the square root of 2, I'll just do the calculator. That's going to be 1.4. Okay? And the number of decimal places that you need to go out here is all really going to depend on how close it is to other numbers. So let's say I had a 1.43 right here, then you'd probably need that number after to see how to compare them. Okay? All right. So next I would pretty much do the number line and make sure that you label them with the original. So here at 2, but make sure you label it as the square root of 4. And then next is 0.4, so that's going to be just under halfway over here. All right, negative 2/3, so that's negative 0.6 repeating would be in the negative direction, just over half. So right here-ish. $1.4 is almost halfway between 1 and 2, but you want to make sure you label that as the square root of 2. And then negative 1.5 over here. So right halfway between negative 1 and negative 2. All right, and then the last thing, you're just gonna make your list least to greatest. So now that you have the number line, you can work your way left to right, okay? So it's gonna be negative 1.5, negative 2/3, 0.4, square root of 2, and then square root of 4. Okay. Go ahead and try that last one. And then remember, once you're done, feel free to start homework and then come back when we go over it. Okay? Yeah. Nope, so that's going to be tomorrow's notes. Yeah.
Is the rest
Yep, so you're always going to work up to well, I mean, not always, because this is the only unit we're going to even do this, and then it's Math Excel. But you're always going to work up to the next prior knowledge check. So as soon as you see prior knowledge check again, that's tomorrow's notes. Okay?
Oh.
Yeah, so I think it's just the one sheet. Yeah.
this.
All right, so for this one, 3.5 is already a decimal. Negative 2.1 is good. Okay, and then what's the square root of 9? 3. All right, you should have divided that in the calculator, 7 divided by 2, so you should get, I think, negative 3.5. And then square root of 5, I think it's like 2.2 what? Hold on, let me see. Rounded, right?
Yeah.
2. Okay, so yeah, make sure for this, you guys round because Math Excel. Normally I don't care. So it's 2.236, right? Math Excel is like psychotically picky. So if you were to do 2.23 and just cut it off, it's going to mark the whole thing wrong, okay? So kind of go back and review rounding in your head just to make sure that you guys don't miss points. So, all right, so if we plot these now, 3.5 right here. Negative 2.1 is going to be over here. 3. Negative 3.5 is over here. Oh, crap. I'll just write it above it. Negative 7 over 2. And then this one should be square root of 9. See, I always forget to do that too. All right. And then square root of 5, so it's like 2.24. These are all so close to each other. So that's going to be the square root of 5. Okay. So least to greatest order that you should have is negative 7 over 2. Then negative 2.1. Then square root of 5. Square root of 9. And then 3.5. All right, are we okay there? Yeah? All right. So the last thing is always going to be the lesson check. Sometimes we skip it, sometimes we don't. It just depends on timing. And yeah, but we're going to like start out strong. So those problems won't ever really be written in for you. They're kind of like surprise problems. And that's kind of yours and my way to check, like, okay, do I know how to do all this? Like, it's like a last little mini quiz, and as long as you get them right or most of them right, or you understand why you got them wrong, then you'll do good on the quiz, okay? Okay, so your lesson check problems. So for number 1, you're going to do the subsets, okay? So name all subsets. And you're going to do it for 2 things. You're going to do it for square root of 11 and for negative 7. And then number 2, you're going to do least to greatest. The reason why we don't have one where it's like you just use the symbol is because you're accomplishing the same thing with a big list, okay? So order from least to greatest. Then you're going to plot them and also label them. So you're going to do it with. And this one is going to be like a really good example of one that you would see on a quiz where you wouldn't necessarily really need a calculator to do the decimal form, okay? And as soon as you're done, like doing this, then while you wait, just work on your homework worksheet, and I'm going to put the answers up in a couple minutes, and then you can check it, okay? I also frequently forget to put the answers up. Like, my brain checks out after I'm done writing this, so you might have to remind me sometimes. It's my flaw. Okay, so if you look, so we're on Thursday at the top, right? Doing 1.1. So the worksheet that's for homework, so all that, basically this packet is going to be due next week Wednesday. Okay? So right before the quiz, they'll just hand me your packet and I'll just put in all your homework at the same time. So you don't have to necessarily have this worksheet done tomorrow. It just all has to be done by Wednesday. Okay? All right, let me, so I'm gonna put these answers up, guys. Make sure you check them before you pack up. Yes, do you have your planner?
Yeah.
We grab that guy, because I think they're starting to check them.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so that's what your answer should be. Okay, so check, make sure you're good. Make sure if you didn't get something correct that you know why. If not, you can ask. I'll help you.